In my hospital room, my daughter whispered to my husband, "When he's gone, everything will be ours. The house, the accounts, everything." He chuckled quietly. "I can't wait to finally get rid of the old miser." They leaned over me, thinking I was still in a coma. Then the doctor came in, looked at them, and asked, "Your father just came out of a coma. Have you talked to him yet?" I slowly opened my eyes and calmly said, "Surprise." At that moment, I saw their entire future crumble before their eyes, and mine was just beginning. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. The breakfast with Tom had gone well. We'd talked about the old firm, laughed about clients who thought debits and credits were suggestions rather than immutable laws. I felt lighter driving home than I had in weeks, maybe months. The morning sun filtered through the oak trees lining my street, and I remember thinking how good it was to reconnect with people from my past life. That lightness evaporated the moment I opened my front door. Inez and Rodney sat waiting in my living room, not relaxing, waiting. The difference was in their posture, the way they both straightened when I walked in, like predators spotting prey. My daughter manufactured a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Dad, perfect timing. We need to talk to you about something important." I set my keys on the hall table, hung my jacket carefully on the rack, buying time. "Can it wait? I'd like to change into something comfortable." "No." Rodney leaned forward, elbows on knees. "This opportunity won't wait, Clifton. Just 15,000, 6 months maximum, and we triple it. I've got inside information this time." Inside information. The phrase made my jaw tighten. I walked past them into the living room, settled into my armchair. "Inside information. Like the last sure thing?" Inez's smile flickered. "Dad, this is different." "Different?" I reached for the small notebook I kept in my shirt pocket. Old habits from 4 decades of accounting. Every transaction recorded, every promise documented. I flipped through pages filled with neat columns. Different from the 35,000 for Rodney's startup that folded in 8 months. Different from the 12,000 for those real estate courses that never led to a single sale. "Those were learning experiences," Rodney said, but his voice had an edge now. "Learning experiences I funded?" I ran my finger down the entries. 33,000 to clear your credit card debt. 18,000 for that franchise opportunity. 5,000 here, 7,000 there. "Do you know what it totals, Rodney?" He said nothing. Inez's expression had frozen into something hard and glassy. $83,000 over 3 years. Show me $1 of profit first. Just 1. Inez stood. Her movements were rigid, mechanical. "You're being unreasonable, Dad." "Unreasonable?" I closed the notebook, tucked it back into my pocket. "I'm being financially responsible. Something you two might consider." She turned to face me fully then, and something in her eyes made my skin prickle. The false warmth had burned away completely, leaving something cold and calculated beneath. "That money," she said, each word measured and deliberate. "It'll all be ours eventually anyway. Why not let us use it now when we actually need it?" The room went very quiet. Even Rodney seemed to sense he should stay still. "Is that what this is about?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. "You're planning my estate while I'm still living in it?" Inez's jaw tightened. "I didn't mean it like that." "Then how did you mean it, exactly?" She grabbed her purse from the couch, movements sharp and angry. "Forget it. Just forget it." Rodney stood too, muttering as he followed her toward the stairs leading to their second-floor bedroom. "Stubborn old man doesn't get how business works. Sitting on all that money like some miser while we're drowning." I let them go. What else could I say? I sat in my armchair for a long time after their footsteps faded, staring at the bookshelf across the room without really seeing it. My wife's photo smiled at me from the mantel, frozen in time 23 years ago, before cancer took her. Before Inez became this stranger who calculated my death into her financial planning. The afternoon crept by. I retreated to my study, went through some paperwork, tried to focus on the consulting work I still did occasionally for former clients. But the words on the pages kept blurring, replaced by Inez's face, that cold certainty in her voice. Eventually I heard sounds from the kitchen, footsteps, cabinet doors, running water. I glanced at the small clock on my desk and was surprised to see it was already evening. My stomach reminded me I hadn't eaten since breakfast with Tom. I walked into the kitchen to find Inez at the stove, stirring something in a large pot. She didn't look at me. "I made dinner," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "Beef stew, your favorite." My favorite. She remembered that at least. Or maybe she'd just checked the recipe box, the one with my wife's handwritten cards. "You haven't cooked in months." "I should do it more often. We're family, right?" She ladled stew into a bowl, set it at my usual place at the kitchen table. "Sit, eat while it's hot." The steam rising from the bowl carried the rich scent of beef and vegetables. My stomach growled. I sat down, picked up my spoon. Inez watched me from the counter, arms folded, expression unreadable. The first bite tasted fine, rich, savory, just a hint of that bitterness good red wine adds to stew. I took another bite, then another. Inez turned back to the stove, cleaning up. "Where's Rodney?" I asked between bites. "Out. He needed air." I ate steadily, finishing most of the bowl despite the slight bitterness that seemed to grow stronger near the bottom. Probably just the wine reduction concentrating. I pushed back from the table, intending to help with dishes, but my head swam slightly. "I think I need to sit down," I said, but my voice sounded strange to my own ears, distant and hollow. "You're already sitting, Dad." "Right, yes. I meant..." What had I meant? The kitchen tilted sideways, then righted itself. My stomach lurched, not with fullness, but with something sharper, something wrong. I stood, or tried to. My legs felt disconnected from my body, responding seconds too late to my brain's commands. The chair scraped against the tile floor. Inez was saying something, but her words reached me through layers of cotton. The hallway. I needed to reach the hallway, the phone on the hall table. Call someone. Tom, maybe, or Dr. Patterson, my physician for 20 years. My hand found the doorframe, gripped it. Each step took monumental effort. Behind me, Inez's voice drifted. "Dad, are you okay?" No, I wasn't okay. The floor kept shifting, rising and falling like a ship's deck. My vision narrowed, edges going dark, the hallway stretching impossibly long. The phone sat on the table near the front door, maybe 20 feet away. Might as well have been 20 miles. I forced my legs forward, left foot, right foot. The mechanics of walking suddenly complex and foreign. My shoulder hit the wall hard enough to hurt, but the pain felt far away. The phone was close now, so close, I reached for it. My legs gave out completely. I crashed against the staircase railing, my ribs taking the impact. The phone fell from my nerveless fingers, clattering on the hardwood floor, spinning away. I tried to call out, but my tongue was thick and useless in my mouth. The floor rushed up to meet me. Darkness swallowed everything. Somewhere far away, I thought I heard a door open, footsteps. But consciousness slipped away like water through my fingers. Bright lights, beeping sounds, voices speaking urgently in medical terms I couldn't quite grasp. I tried to open my eyes, but my eyelids felt like lead weights, refusing to obey. Something cold pressed against my arm, pressure on my chest. More voices, closer now. BP stabilizing at 120/75. Oxygen saturation coming up, 94%. "Mr. Marshall, can you hear me?" "Mr. Marshall, squeeze my hand if you can hear me." I forced my eyes open. The brightness stabbed through my skull. White ceiling tiles swam above me. Too bright, too close. A face materialized, hovering over mine. Female, young, wearing blue scrubs, and a concerned expression. "There you are," she said, and her voice was gentle. The first gentle thing I'd experienced in what felt like forever. "Welcome back, Mr. Marshall. I'm Jennifer, your nurse. You're in the hospital. You're safe." Hospital. The word took time to process, to connect to anything meaningful. I tried to speak, but my throat was raw, scraped clean. Only a hoarse croak emerged. "Don't try to talk yet." Jennifer held a cup with a straw to my lips. Small sips, very small. The water was cold, almost painful going down, but I'd never tasted anything better. After a few sips, she pulled the cup away despite my weak protest. "More in a minute. We need to go slow." Slow. Everything felt slow. My thoughts moved through molasses, trying to piece together how I'd gotten here. Last thing I remembered was the hallway, the phone falling, darkness. A man in a white coat appeared at my bedside. Older than Jennifer, maybe mid-40s. with silver threading through his dark hair and tired eyes that had seen too much. "Mr. Marshall, I'm Dr. Ramirez. How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck?" I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. "That's not far off." He pulled up a chair, sat down like he planned to stay a while. "Do you remember what happened before you lost consciousness?" I thought back, forcing my sluggish brain to work. "I was home. I ate dinner. Then I felt sick. Tried to call for help. Your neighbor, Mr. Henderson, saw you through your window. He called 911. That call saved your life." Through the window. The front window next to the door, where I'd collapsed. Tom Henderson, out walking his ancient beagle, probably. I made a mental note to thank him properly when I could stand upright without the room spinning. Hours passed in a blur. More tests, more questions, nurses checking monitors and adjusting tubes I hadn't noticed connected to my arms. Jennifer brought me more water, then a small cup of ice chips that felt like luxury. The fog in my head slowly cleared, though my body still felt foreign and exhausted, like I'd aged decades overnight. Afternoon light slanted through the blinds when Dr. Ramirez returned, carrying a tablet and manila folder. His expression was different now, more grave, more careful. "Mr. Marshall, your vitals have stabilized enough that we need to discuss your test results." Something in his tone made my chest tighten. I struggled to sit up straighter, but my muscles protested. "How bad?" He set the tablet aside, opened the folder, and handed me a printed report covered in medical terminology and numbers. One phrase stood out, highlighted in yellow. "Ethylene glycol. Dangerous levels detected." I don't understand, but I did, even as I said it. The understanding was there, waiting for me to acknowledge it. "Ethylene glycol." Dr. Ramirez's voice was steady, professional, but I caught the undercurrent of something else. Anger, maybe. "It's commonly found in antifreeze, Mr. Marshall. Without immediate treatment, you would have experienced kidney failure, possibly death, within days." "Antifreeze!" The word sat between us like a physical object. How long was I unconscious? 36 hours in a coma. Your neighbor's quick action and the paramedics' response time were crucial. Even a few more hours. He trailed off, but I understood. A few more hours and Tom wouldn't have found anyone to save. 36 hours, I repeated it, trying to make it real. A day and a half, gone. Could it have been accidental? Something I drank by mistake? Dr. Ramirez met my eyes directly. "This type of poisoning doesn't happen by accident, Mr. Marshall. Ethylene glycol has a sweet taste that's sometimes added to food or drink deliberately. Given the amount in your system, this was ingested recently, probably within hours of your collapse." The hospital room felt smaller suddenly. The beeping of monitors seemed louder. I closed my eyes and immediately saw it all again. The kitchen, Ina's at the stove, the bowl of stew steaming in front of me, her watching me eat, arms folded, expression carefully blank. It'll all be ours eventually anyway. "My dinner?" I whispered. "My daughter made dinner." Dr. Ramirez said nothing, but I saw understanding flicker across his face. "She doesn't cook. She hasn't cooked in months, maybe a year. But last night, she made beef stew. Insisted I eat while it was hot. Stood there watching me finish every bite. The bitterness, that strange aftertaste I'd dismissed as concentrated wine. My hands started to shake, and I gripped the edge of the hospital bed to steady them. Jennifer stepped closer, but I waved her away. "Where are they?" My voice came out harder now, steadier. "My daughter and her husband. Have they been here?" Dr. Ramirez exchanged a glance with Jennifer. "No one has come to visit. We've tried calling the number listed as your emergency contact, but no answer." "Of course not. Why would they come? They thought I was dead, or dying, or at least too far gone to tell anyone what happened. They were probably already planning how to sell the house, divide the accounts, spend money they'd decided was already theirs." "The police have been notified," Dr. Ramirez continued. "Given the circumstances, they'll want to speak with you when you're strong enough. Is there anyone else you'd like us to call? Other family?" "No." The word came out bitter. "No family." Jennifer touched my shoulder lightly. "Mr. Marshall, you need rest. Your body has been through trauma. The police can wait until tomorrow." But I couldn't rest. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Inez's face, cold and calculating, watching me eat poison she'd stirred into my favorite meal. Her own father, She'd tried to murder her own father for money she was too impatient to wait for. And Rodney, conveniently out when it happened. Had they planned it together? Had they discussed it over coffee that morning, debated methods, settled on antifreeze because it was accessible, because it would look like maybe I'd made a terrible mistake in the garage? Dr. Ramirez stood. I'll check on you later. Try to rest if you can. You're safe here. Safe. The word should have comforted me. Instead, it just highlighted the horrible truth. I wasn't safe in my own home. Not anymore. Maybe not for a long time, and I'd been too blind to see it. After they left, I lay back against the pillows, staring at the ceiling tiles, counting them, then counting them again. Anything to keep my mind from spiraling. But it spiraled anyway, running through everything. Every loan, every dismissive comment from Rodney. Every time Inez had smiled that empty smile while asking for more money, the pattern had been there. I'd just refused to see it. An accountant who'd spent 40 years spotting financial red flags, and I'd missed the biggest one in my own home. My daughter. My own daughter. The rage built slowly, methodically, like compound interest on a debt long overdue. The hospital room felt smaller as hours passed. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Inez watching me eat that dinner, her eyes following every bite. The beef stew. My favorite. The last thing my wife had cooked for me before she got too sick to stand at the stove. I stared at the ceiling tiles, counting them. 48 tiles in a grid pattern. When I finished counting, I started again. Anything to keep my mind from spiraling. But it spiraled anyway, running backward through time like rewinding a tape. 3 years ago, that's when they'd moved in. Just temporarily, Dad, Inez had said, standing in my doorway with suitcases and that pleading look I'd never been able to refuse. Rodney's business hit a rough patch. We just need a few months to get back on our feet. A few months became a year, then 2, then 3. The first loan came 3 weeks after they moved in. $12,000 for business courses that would lead to guaranteed certification and 6-figure opportunities. I'd written the check while Rodney explained his 5-year plan with charts and projections. The certification never materialized. The courses were a waste, Rodney said later. Not his fault. The instructors didn't know what they were doing. 6 months later, $35,000 for a startup. Rodney had a partner, he said, a guy with connections. They'd import specialty foods from Asia, supply restaurants, make back the investment in a year maximum. I'd reviewed the business plan. It looked solid, professionally formatted. I'd written that check too. The business folded in 8 months. The partner disappeared with most of the capital. Rodney came home furious, betrayed, talking about lawyers and lawsuits that never materialized. Then the credit cards. $33,000 in debt from trying to maintain appearances while building the business. Just this once, Dad, Inez had promised. We'll pay you back first thing when we're solvent. I'd tracked it all. Every check, every wire transfer, every promise. The notebook in my shirt pocket held 3 years of broken commitments. $83,000. Enough to buy a nice house in some parts of the country. Gone like smoke. But the money wasn't the worst part. The worst part was watching them change. At first they'd been grateful. Inez hugged me. Rodney shook my hand firmly, looked me in the eye, called me a lifesaver. They did dishes. They asked about my day. They pretended to care. The pretense eroded gradually, so slowly I barely noticed until it was gone. By the 2nd year, they treated my house like a hotel. Dirty dishes left on the coffee table. Voices carrying late into the night from their room, talking and laughing while I tried to sleep. My groceries disappearing. By the 3rd year, I was an ATM with legs. They'd pass me in the hallway without speaking. When they did speak, it was about money. Always money. More opportunities, more investments, more just this once promises that never meant anything. The recent weeks had been different, darker. They whispered conversations that stopped abruptly when I entered rooms. I'd found them in my study once, Rodney quickly closing the drawer where I kept my will. They'd fumbled excuses about looking for stamps. Last month, Inez had asked casual questions about my retirement accounts. How much was there? Which institution? Who was listed as beneficiary? I'd deflected, uncomfortable with the interrogation disguised as concern. 2 weeks ago, Rodney had brought up life insurance over dinner. Did I have a policy? How much? When was the last time I'd updated it? I'd left the table without finishing my meal. They were counting my money before I was cold, planning their lives around my death. And when I refused to die fast enough, when I refused to hand over more cash to fund their fantasies, they decided to accelerate the timeline. My hands clenched the hospital sheets. The machines beeped their steady rhythm, monitoring my damaged organs, tracking the antifreeze still working through my system. My daughter had done this, had looked me in the eye, smiled her empty smile, and stirred poison into my food. The door opened. Jennifer stepped in, checking the monitors with practiced efficiency. She glanced at me, seemed surprised to find me awake. "Mr. Marshall? I thought you'd be resting." "Can't sleep." She adjusted something on the IV pole, made a note on her tablet. "Your vitals are improving. That's excellent progress." "Jennifer," I kept my voice level, "has anyone come to visit?" Her expression shifted slightly. "Your daughter and her husband are in the waiting area. They arrived about 20 minutes ago. Should I send them in? Visiting hours just started." My daughter and her husband, here to check on their investment, see if I was dead yet, or close enough. An idea crystallized, sharp and clear. "Jennifer, I need to ask you something unusual." She set down the tablet, giving me her full attention. "What is it?" "Don't tell them I'm awake." The words came out steady, deliberate. "Let them think I'm still unconscious." Her eyes widened. "Mr. Marshall, I'm not sure that's appropriate. They've been very worried." "Have they?" I met her gaze directly. "Have they really?" "Because they haven't called once since I've been here. Dr. Ramirez said you tried the emergency contact number multiple times." She said nothing, but something in her expression confirmed I was right. "The doctor told me this wasn't an accident," I continued. "Someone poisoned me deliberately. I need to know the truth. I need to hear what they say when they think no one's listening." Jennifer's professional mask cracked slightly. Understanding flickered across her face, followed by concern. Then something that might have been anger on my behalf. That's a serious accusation." "I know. That's why I need to be certain." She stood silent for a long moment, weighing hospital policy against human intuition. Finally, she nodded slowly. "I can tell them you're stable but unresponsive. Give you a few minutes, but only a few, Mr. Marshall. I can't compromise patient care protocols. A few minutes is all I need." After she left, I reached for my phone on the bedside table. My hands trembled, but not from weakness this time. I positioned it carefully beside my pillow, angled toward where visitors would stand. My thumb found the voice recorder app. Record. I closed my eyes and slowed my breathing. The phone was recording, tucked where they wouldn't notice it. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I kept my face slack, lifeless, the way unconscious people look, relaxed, empty. Footsteps approached in the hallway. The door opened with a soft hydraulic hiss. 2 sets of footsteps entered. I focused on keeping my breathing steady, even, the way it sounds during unconsciousness. Slow inhale, slower exhale. My closed eyelids showed me nothing but darkness, but my other senses sharpened. Inez's perfume reached me first, that expensive scent she'd bought with money she'd borrowed and never repaid. Her footsteps moved closer. The bed shifted slightly as she leaned against it. "Oh, Dad." Her voice carried that artificial sweetness I'd heard 1,000 times. Concern wrapped around calculation like gift paper over something rotten. "Please wake up. We're here now. Everything will be okay." Rodney stayed near the door. His breathing was audible, quick and shallow, nervous. Inez's fingers touched my hand. Cold. They lay there without warmth, without the gentle squeeze that real affection requires. Just touching for the sake of appearance, for the nurses watching from the hallway, maybe. Several seconds passed. A chair scraped. Rodney's footsteps moved around the bed, checking the monitors. "What do all these numbers mean?" His voice was tight. "I don't know. Heart rate, probably. Oxygen." Inez's hand lifted from mine. Her voice changed, dropped the sweet coating. "He looks terrible. Think he'll make it?" The casual tone made my jaw want to clench. I kept my face slack. Doctor said 50-50. Rodney moved away from the monitors. "Honestly, maybe it's better if he doesn't. I mean, he's 62. He's had a good run. A good run, like I was a horse they'd bet on and lost. The house is worth $380, easy." Inez's voice came from near the window now. I checked comparable sales yesterday. That Victorian 2 blocks over sold for 400 last month, and it needed more work than ours. Ours. My house was already theirs in her mind. Plus his retirement accounts. Rustling sounds like Rodney checking his phone. He told me once he had over 400,000 saved. Conservative investments, boring stuff, but it's there. Life insurance is another 75,000. Inez again. I saw the policy last month when I was looking for stamps. Looking for stamps. That was what she'd said when I found her in my study. Rodney's hand on my desk drawer. Total liquid assets around 850,000, give or take. Rodney's voice carried a note of excitement now. Plus the house. We could clear over 1 million once everything's settled. Silence fell. I kept breathing steadily. In, out. In, out. You sure we were careful? Rodney's nervousness bled through. The antifreeze in his dinners this week. You measured it, right? Small enough doses? My heart stuttered. Every muscle wanted to tense, to jump up, to grab them both. I forced stillness. Perfect. Absolute stillness. Of course I measured. Inez sounded annoyed. Little bits each night in his food. Not enough to taste. Just enough to accumulate. Looks like organ failure, not poisoning. But they tested him? What if they find it? So what? Trace amounts could be anything. Could be accidental exposure in the garage. He's old. His organs are already stressed. Even if they suspect something, they can't prove deliberate poisoning from trace amounts. They'd planned this. Carefully. Methodically. My own daughter had researched how to kill me slowly enough that it would seem natural. I still think we should have just... Rodney lowered his voice, but the room was small enough that I caught every word. One large dose would have been faster. And more obvious. Inez's tone carried the patience of someone explaining simple concepts to a child. Slow accumulation means his organs shut down gradually. Happens to old people all the time. No one questions it. Old people. I was old people now. Disposable. Inconvenient. When do you think we can access the accounts? Rodney asked. Death certificate takes a few weeks usually. The will goes through probate, but we're the only beneficiaries. I made sure of that when I convinced him to update it last year. Last year? When she'd suggested I review my estate planning, make sure everything was in order. She'd driven me to the lawyer's office, sat in the waiting room, asked gentle questions afterward about what I'd decided. I thought she cared about being responsible. We could travel. Rodney's voice lifted with enthusiasm. Actually travel, not just talk about it. Hawaii. Maybe Europe. Somewhere expensive. We could start that import business properly. Real capital this time, not scrape together loans. Buy a decent car, not that old sedan he refused to replace. Finally live properly instead of listening to him count every dollar like some miser. Rodney's bitter laugh made my hands want to curl into fists beneath the sheets, acting like we were bleeding him dry when he's sitting on nearly 1 million in assets. It's our money anyway, Inez said, and her voice carried that same cold certainty from our confrontation. We shouldn't have to wait for him to die naturally. That could take 20 more years. What are we supposed to do? Live in his spare bedroom until we're 50? At least we won't have to deal with his lectures anymore. Rodney moved back toward the door, his disappointed looks every time another business didn't work out. Some people aren't meant to be entrepreneurs, Inez said. He never understood that. Just because he sat in an office adding numbers for 40 years doesn't mean everyone wants that life. They stood silent for a moment. My chest ached from holding my breathing pattern steady. Every word burned into my memory, searing itself into my brain. Should we stay longer? Rodney asked. For appearances? Few more minutes. Then we'll tell the nurses we'll come back tomorrow. Grieving family, keeping vigil, all that. Their footsteps moved toward the door. Inez paused near my bed. For a horrible second I thought she might notice the phone. But her hand just touched my shoulder briefly, a performative gesture of affection without meaning. Bye, Dad, she whispered, and there wasn't a trace of emotion in it. The door opened, closed. Their footsteps faded down the hallway. I lay perfectly still for 30 more seconds, counting them, making sure they were truly gone. Then my eyes snapped open. My hands shook as I lifted the phone, stopping the recording. The screen showed the file. 43 minutes of audio. Every confession. every plan, every cold calculation about my death. The trembling wasn't from weakness anymore. It was pure rage, crystallized into something hard and patient. I spent the next 20 minutes listening to the recording 3 times, ensuring every word was clear. Then I waited. Nurse Jennifer appeared in the doorway, her expression questioning. "Mr. Marshall, are you all right? I need a favor?" I gestured to the chair beside my bed. "2 favors, actually." She sat, wariness mixed with curiosity in her eyes. "What kind of favors?" "Call my daughter and her husband. Tell them I'm awake. Ask them to come back." Her eyebrows rose. "You want them to return? After what you—" "I need them to know I heard them." The words came out flat, certain. "I need to see their faces when they realize." Jennifer studied me for a long moment. Whatever she saw there made her nod slowly. "And the second favor?" "Ask Dr. Ramirez to stop by. Timing matters." She left without further questions. I lay back against the pillows, phone clutched in my hand, and waited. The 20 minutes that followed felt eternal. I rehearsed what I'd say, how I'd look at them, decided against emotional outburst. Cold control would cut deeper. The machines beeped their steady rhythm. My heart rate stayed calm on the monitor despite the adrenaline coursing through my system. I'd spent 40 years maintaining composure during tense audits, facing down executives who'd cooked their books. This was just another audit, just another set of numbers that didn't add up. Except these numbers had tried to kill me. Footsteps in the hallway, multiple sets. I closed my eyes, slowed my breathing one more time. The door opened. Inez's perfume reached me first. That expensive scent bought with borrowed money. Their footsteps stopped just inside the doorway. "I don't understand," Inez said, voice tight. "They called saying he was awake, but he looks—" Dr. Ramirez's voice boomed from the hallway, perfectly timed. "Mr. Marshall's family! Wonderful news!" He swept into the room with professional enthusiasm, clipboard in hand. "Your father has emerged from his coma. Such a remarkable recovery. Have you had a chance to speak with him yet?" The question hung in the air like a blade. I opened my eyes slowly, deliberately. Let my gaze focus on Inez first. Watched the exact moment recognition flooded her features. The widening eyes, the color draining from her face like water from a sink. Then I shifted to Rodney. His attempted smile collapsed into something closer to a grimace, muscles fighting between false joy and genuine terror. I said one word: surprise. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the machines seemed quieter. Inez recovered first, or tried to. "Dad!" "Oh, we were so worried. We've been here the whole time." Her voice cracked on worried. The false brightness in her tone was like fingernails on glass. Rodney stammered, This is wonderful news. We were saying how much we—" He trailed off. Neither of them could maintain eye contact. Their gazes skittered around the room, landing anywhere but on me. I watched their panic build, watched them calculate what I'd heard, what I knew. Dr. Ramirez glanced between us, professional smile faltering as he sensed the wrong temperature in the room. "Well, I'll give you some family time. Mr. Marshall, your vitals look excellent. We'll discuss discharge planning tomorrow." He left. The door closed with a soft click. Inez took a step forward. "Dad, we need to talk about—" I raised one hand. The gesture stopped her mid-sentence. "I need rest." My voice came out exactly how I wanted it. Cold, flat, empty of anything resembling warmth. "Leave now. We'll talk later. Much later." "But Dad, you don't understand. Leave." They stood frozen for 3 heartbeats. Then Rodney grabbed Inez's arm, pulling her toward the door. She resisted briefly, mouth opening for another attempt at explanation, but something in my expression made her close it again. They left. Quick steps, almost running. The door swung shut behind them. I sat in the sudden silence, my hands shaking now that they were gone. Not from weakness, from the effort of maintaining that control, of not screaming at them, of not letting 40 years of rage pour out in an incoherent flood. Instead, I picked up my phone with trembling fingers and scrolled through my contacts until I found the card Detective Johnson had left. He answered on the second ring. "Detective Johnson, this is Clifton Marshall, from the poisoning case. You said you wanted evidence?" "Mr. Marshall, yes. What kind of evidence are we talking about?" Recorded confession. Every word. They thought I was unconscious. They described exactly how they poisoned me, why they did it, and what they planned to do with my assets after I died. Silence on the other end, but I could hear him breathing, processing. Mr. Marshall, I can be there in 20 minutes. I'll be here. Detective Johnson arrived 40 minutes later. Traffic, he explained, apologizing. I didn't care. Time had become elastic, stretching and contracting in strange ways. He sat in the chair Jennifer had used, notebook open, pen ready. I played him the recording twice. He sat silent throughout, expression carefully neutral, but his pen moved constantly across the pages, taking notes, building a case. When it finished the second time, he clicked off his pen and looked at me directly. Mr. Marshall, he said, voice steady and professional, we'll need your formal statement, and then we're going to arrest your daughter and her husband for attempted murder. 3 days later, I signed my discharge papers. The hospital hallways felt different now, no longer a place where I was vulnerable, but where I'd gathered my weapons. The nurse who wheeled me to the exit made cheerful small talk about following doctor's orders and taking my medications on schedule. I nodded, barely listening. Detective Johnson had called yesterday with an update. Inez and Rodney were arrested within 48 hours of receiving the recording. Attempted murder, conspiracy, evidence tampering. The charges stacked up like bad debts. They'd been held 24 hours, then released on $50,000 bail. They used a bail bondsman, Johnson had explained. Paid about $5,000 non-refundable, probably secured through a high-interest loan. They looked rough coming out of holding. I'd thanked him and hung up. Rough. That was a start. A taxi drove me home. I'd arranged it the night before, unwilling to ask anyone for help, unwilling to show weakness. The driver tried to assist me from the car, but I waved him off, paid him, tipped adequately but not generously, and walked to my front door on legs that still felt unsteady, but were getting stronger with each step. The key turned in the lock. The same lock. I'd expected they might have changed it, locked me out of my own house. But no, they weren't thinking that strategically yet. I pushed the door open. The house smelled stale, closed up. 3 days of uncirculated air. I walked through slowly, each room a memory. The kitchen where Inez had prepared that final dinner. The hallway where I'd collapsed. The living room where they'd demanded more money. Evidence. It was all evidence now. Upstairs I heard movement, footsteps quick and heavy, then voices sharp and urgent. They were home. Of course they were. Where else would they go? I settled into my armchair in the living room and waited. They came down together. Inez first, Rodney close behind. They stopped in the doorway, seeing me. Their faces were haggard, shadows under their eyes, that rough look Detective Johnson had mentioned. We need to talk. Inez's voice carried forced authority, like she was trying to reclaim ground she'd never actually held. About what you did. That recording, you can't just record people without permission. It's illegal. I looked at her calmly. Florida is a one-party consent state. I was that one party. The recording is completely legal. But we didn't know. You confessed to attempted murder. You described adding antifreeze to my food for a week. You discussed selling my house while planning my funeral. I kept my voice level, conversational. Everything else is just consequences. Rodney stepped forward, desperation making him bold. This is insane. We can explain. It was just talk. We didn't mean... You didn't mean to poison me? I cut him off. Then why do I have toxicology reports showing antifreeze in my system? Why did I spend 36 hours in a coma? Neither answered. Inez's jaw worked silently, searching for an argument that didn't exist. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a business card, set it on the coffee table between us. Stephen McGregor, estate and family law attorney. You'll want to contact him, or rather your attorneys will. What are you talking about? All future communication goes through lawyers, mine and yours. I'm done talking to you directly. Inez stared at the card like it was a snake. You're overreacting. We're family. Family. The word tasted bitter. Family doesn't poison family for inheritance money. Get out of my sight. They left. Went upstairs. I heard their door slam. Muffled arguing through the ceiling. Let them argue. In 15 days, they wouldn't have a ceiling to argue beneath. The next morning, I drove to Stephen McGregor's office downtown. The building was old brick, established, the kind of place that radiated stability and law. His receptionist showed me in immediately. McGregor was mid-50s, silver hair, sharp eyes that assessed me as I entered. We shook hands. His grip was firm. "Mr. Marshall, I followed your case in the news. Attempted murder by family member. Terrible business. It's about to become your business." I sat in the leather chair across from his desk. "I need 3 things done simultaneously." He pulled out a legal pad. "I'm listening. First, immediate will revision. My current will leaves everything to my daughter. I want her removed completely. Everything goes to charity instead. Local organizations, hospital foundation, literacy programs, anything but her." McGregor nodded, taking notes. "Straightforward. We can execute that today. Second, eviction. They're living in my house. Given the criminal charges and documented threat to my safety, I want them out. Legal eviction by the book. Also straightforward. The criminal charges give clear cause. They'll have 15 days from notice. Third, civil lawsuit. Repayment of all loans I've made over 3 years. I have documentation." I pulled out the spreadsheet I'd printed yesterday before discharge. 3 years of data. Every transaction highlighted and cross-referenced. McGregor's eyebrows rose as he reviewed it. "This is exceptionally thorough. I'm an accountant. Was an accountant. Old habits. 80,000 in loans." He ran his finger down the columns. "No written repayment agreements. Oral promises only. Family arrangement. Statute of limitations is 4 years for oral contracts in Florida. We're well within that. I'll file for the principal amount plus 5% annual interest. That's the legal presumption rate. Plus legal fees and costs," he calculated quickly. "Total claim around 95,000. Do it?" We spent the next 2 hours going through documents. The will revision came first. McGregor pulled up a template. We specified the charities, and I signed. A notary was called in. 3 signatures, 2 witnesses, and Inez was erased from my estate. The eviction notice took longer. McGregor wanted the language precise, citing the criminal charges, the threat to my safety, the legal grounds. When he finished drafting it, I read it twice. Perfect. The civil complaint was last. McGregor attached my spreadsheet as Exhibit A. Every loan, every date, every broken promise was now court record. "These will be filed today," McGregor said as I prepared to leave. "The eviction notice and civil suit will be served within 48 hours. They'll have 15 days to vacate and 20 days to respond to the lawsuit." "Good. Mr. Marshall." He paused at the door. "This is comprehensive legal action. They're going to be under significant pressure. Criminal charges, eviction, civil suit. Are you prepared for how they might react? They tried to murder me for my money." I met his gaze directly. "I'm prepared for anything." I drove home, parked in my driveway, walked to my living room window, and waited. 2 days later, a process server appeared. I watched from behind the curtain as he rang the doorbell. Rodney answered, confused. The server handed him papers, said something official, and left. Rodney read the eviction notice twice, face darkening from confusion to rage. Inez snatched it from his hands. Even from 40 feet away, I could see her knees buckle slightly. 15 days. They had 15 days to find somewhere else to live. The first week after the legal filings hit them like a financial avalanche. I tracked each development with the same attention I'd once given quarterly audits, maintaining a detailed spreadsheet of their declining circumstances. 2 days after receiving the eviction notice, they found an attorney willing to take their case. Barry Whitmore operated from a strip mall office between a nail salon and a tax preparation service. I learned about him through McGregor, who received notice of his appearance as their counsel. Whitmore filed a motion to dismiss the eviction, arguing that family members couldn't be evicted under Florida housing law protections. McGregor called me that afternoon. He's technically correct that Florida has family member protections in some circumstances, but criminal charges override those protections. The hearing is scheduled for next week. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected. Generic wood paneling, fluorescent lights that flickered occasionally. The judge's bench elevated just enough to confer authority. I sat in the gallery, 3 rows back, wearing a dark suit that I'd had to have altered. I'd lost weight during the hospital stay. Inez and Rodney sat at the defendant's table with Whitmore between them. Inez wore a conservative dress I'd never seen before, probably purchased for court appearances. Rodney's suit was wrinkled at the shoulders. Neither looked at me when they entered. Judge Martinez was mid-50s, efficient in her movements. She read through the motions quickly, then looked at Whitmore. "Counselor, you're arguing family member exemption prevents eviction?" Whitmore stood. "Yes, Your Honor. The petitioner's daughter and her husband have resided in the property for 3 years. Florida law provides protections for family members to prevent—" "Mr. Whitmore," Judge Martinez's tone stopped him cold. "Are you aware your clients are currently under indictment for attempted murder of the property owner?" "Yes, Your Honor, but those charges are unproven, and criminal charges of attempted murder constitute extraordinary circumstances. The landlord's safety concerns are valid and compelling. Motion denied. 15 days stands from original notice date." She checked her calendar. "That gives them until Thursday of next week. Next case." Whitmore stood frozen for a moment, then gathered his papers. Outside the courtroom, I watched him deliver the news to his clients. "We can appeal, but honestly," he looked uncomfortable, "with the attempted murder charge, I'd recommend focusing on the criminal defense instead." They paid him his fee. I saw Rodney counting cash from his wallet and left separately. I walked to my car alone, satisfied with the efficiency of actual justice. The next morning, McGregor executed the bank garnishment. The civil suit allowed us to freeze assets pending judgment. Rodney's savings account, $8,000, his entire emergency fund, was locked. McGregor forwarded me the email chain. Rodney had called the bank, then his attorney, then sent increasingly frantic messages to various people trying to understand what had happened. $8,000. They froze $8,000. How are we supposed to live? The answer, I knew from experience, was credit cards. High interest, predatory rate credit cards that would charge them 24% annually while they tried to stay afloat. They'd need first month, last month, and security deposit for any new apartment. With the garnishment, they'd have to borrow it all. 3 days before their move-out deadline, I drove past several apartment complexes in the less expensive parts of town. I wasn't following them exactly, just happened to be in the area, running my own errands. At the third complex, I saw the rental truck in the parking lot. They were moving into Palmetto Gardens Apartments, a rundown complex near the industrial district. 1 bedroom, $1,200 a month based on the sign out front. The units had water-stained siding and chain-link fences around tiny patios. I parked across the street and watched for a few minutes. Inez carried a box from the truck, moving slowly, like each step took effort. Rodney followed with a lamp, which he set down hard enough that I heard the base crack from 40 feet away. They'd lived in my 4-bedroom house with a 2-car garage and a 1/4-acre yard. Now they had 600 square feet and a view of a parking lot. A week later, through a mutual acquaintance at the business association, I learned Inez had taken a job, Sonny's Diner on Colonial Drive, waitressing, $12 an hour plus tips. She'd been unemployed for 2 years, living off my money, and now she was back in service work. I drove past the diner one evening. Through the window, I could see her in the uniform, teal dress, white apron, name tag. She was taking an order from a family of 4, pen moving across her pad, body language screaming exhaustion. The same acquaintance mentioned Rodney was trying to restart his business ventures. Emails to potential investors, lunch meetings, another pitch for another guaranteed opportunity. He was hiding the criminal charges. Meanwhile, their marriage was showing serious fractures. One of their new neighbors at Palmetto Gardens mentioned to the building manager that they argued constantly. Loud fights late at night about money, about whose fault everything was. The building manager mentioned it to McGregor, who mentioned it to me. Small town, connected networks. In my home office, I updated my spreadsheet. Eviction completed. Garnishment executed. Employment status: Inez working minimum wage, Rodney unemployed, housing downgraded to cheap apartment, marriage deteriorating. Each line item represented calculated consequences, not vindictive pleasure, just systematic accountability. Through my former colleague at the business association, I learned Rodney was networking again. Emails sent to potential investors, lunch meetings scheduled, another business pitch in development. He was hiding the criminal charges. That, I decided, needed to be corrected. Robert Chen had worked with me for 15 years at the audit firm before I retired. When I called him at the Orlando Business Development Association, he listened carefully to what I needed. "Robert, I need you to understand something. My daughter and her husband tried to poison me. It's not rumor. They're charged with attempted murder. I have the evidence. And Rodney is currently pitching investors without mentioning any of this." Silence on the other end. Then, "Clifton, I knew you'd been in the hospital, but attempted murder? Your own daughter. Case number 2025 CR 08847. Detective Johnson at Orlando PD can confirm everything. Public record. What do you need from me?" "He's meeting with people in your network. They deserve to know who they're dealing with." Robert was quiet for a moment. "You're right. They do. I'll make some calls." Within 2 days, Rodney's calendar cleared. Investor meetings canceled without explanation. Networking contacts stopped responding to emails. The business community in Orlando was smaller than people realized. Word traveled fast when it needed to, but I wanted it to travel further. Robert had another connection, Michelle Torres at the Orlando Sentinel. She covered local crime and business stories. Through Robert, I made sure she learned about the case, not directly from me, just a casual mention that there was an interesting attempted murder case involving a local family. Financial motives, pretty compelling evidence. Journalists verify, that's their job. Torres checked the court records, confirmed the charges, reached out to Detective Johnson for comment. 3 days later, the article published, "Local couple charged in elderly father's poisoning." It was approximately 800 words. Professional, factual, no sensationalism. It included our names, the charges, a brief summary of the case. Detective Johnson was quoted confirming the audio recording evidence. The article mentioned the trial date was pending. I read it twice at my kitchen table with my morning coffee. Then I watched what happened next. The online version appeared simultaneously with the print edition. Within hours, it started spreading. Facebook shares, next-door community discussions, local crime watch groups. Someone posted it to a LinkedIn discussion about elder abuse. The comments accumulated. Most expressed shock and condemnation. Some debated innocent until proven guilty, but they were the minority. The story hit that particular nerve. Adult children betraying elderly parents for money. It resonated. By evening, the article had 200 shares and 50-plus comments across various platforms. Our names were now permanently associated with attempted murder in a searchable digital format. The consequences came faster than even I'd calculated. Inez's manager at Sonny's Diner saw the article, or more likely, one of her co-workers saw it and showed the manager. Either way, she was fired within 24 hours. Terminated effective immediately due to negative publicity, according to the text message she sent to Rodney, which he screenshot and sent to their public defender, which ended up in court discovery, which McGregor shared with me. Their few remaining friends stopped contact. I knew this because I drove past their apartment complex one evening and saw a car I recognized, a couple who used to visit them at my house, pull into the parking lot, then immediately leave after the driver checked their phone, presumably reading something, presumably about the article. Rodney's mother called me 4 days after publication. Patricia was 71, lived in Tampa, and had been sending Rodney money periodically to help with rent. She'd thought this was all some family dispute I was exaggerating. "Mr. Marshall," her voice shook, "I just read the article. I've been sending Rodney money. I thought you were being vindictive after some argument. I didn't know they actually... I'm so sorry. Mrs. Patricia, you're not responsible for your son's choices. I appreciate you reaching out. I've told him I can't help anymore. I can't believe he would do something like that." The conversation lasted 30 minutes. She apologized repeatedly. I accepted gracefully. When we hung up, I added another line to my spreadsheet. Family support, eliminated. The article had done what court documents alone couldn't, transformed their crime from legal matter into public shame. Every Google search of their names would now return that article. Every potential employer, every landlord, every future business contact would find it instantly. I monitored the social media discussions, not obsessively, just periodically checking to see how far the story spread. Further than I'd expected. A crime blogger picked it up. A Facebook page about elder abuse shared it. The comments ranged from calls for maximum sentences to discussions about warning signs of financial abuse. Some people defended them. Innocent until proven guilty, they wrote. We don't know the full story. But those voices were drowned out by the majority expressing disgust at adult children poisoning an elderly father for inheritance money. McGregor called with an update about the civil suit. Their attorney tried to negotiate a payment plan. They're offering $500 a month toward the $95,000. At that rate, they'd be paying for 15 years. Rejected. Already did. Will proceed to trial. Through the building manager at Palmetto Gardens, who McGregor knew through a property law case years ago, I learned they spent most evenings now reading the online comments about themselves. The thin walls meant neighbors heard everything. They're calling us monsters. Inez's voice carried through the walls, according to the neighbor. Someone posted our address. How did this happen? Rodney's response was apparently less focused on the how and more on the whose fault. The arguments intensified. Blame shifting, accusations about whose idea the poisoning had been, who couldn't measure the doses properly, who spent too much on the cheap attorney. A marriage under pressure reveals its foundation. Theirs, apparently, was built on mutual greed rather than any actual partnership. When the greed stopped working, nothing remained. I didn't take pleasure in their suffering. That wasn't what this was about. But watching natural consequences unfold, public accountability for public actions felt appropriate. They'd tried to make my death look natural. Instead, their crime became public knowledge, documented and permanent. The article had accomplished more than any civil judgment could. It had made their actions known to everyone who mattered in their lives, past and future. That was worth more than money. 2 weeks after the article published, McGregor called with news. The criminal prosecutor had approached their public defender with a plea bargain. Inez and Rodney were cracking under the combined pressure of legal fees, lost income, and social exile. They're offering a deal, McGregor explained over the phone. Guilty plea to attempted poisoning, reduced from attempted murder, in exchange for probation instead of prison time. 3 years supervised probation, community service, restitution. Why reduce the charge? The audio recording makes the case so strong that going to trial would waste court resources. The prosecutor knows they'll plead guilty eventually. This just speeds up the process and saves taxpayer money. I considered this. Prison had seemed appropriate for attempted murder, but probation with a permanent criminal record, combined with the civil judgment and social consequences, created a different kind of justice. Longer lasting, maybe. What do you recommend? Take it. The guilty plea is what matters. Formal admission in court. And probation means they'll be supervised, monitored, restricted for years. One mistake and they go to prison anyway. 3 days later, I learned through McGregor that their public defender, James Martinez, had held a meeting with his clients. The conversation, as relayed through the legal grapevine, hadn't gone well. Martinez had been blunt. Listen carefully. They have you on recording confessing to poisoning your father. Every word, doses, methods, motives. If we go to trial, you're looking at 10 to 15 years in prison. The plea offer, probation, is a gift you don't deserve but need to take. According to Martinez's later comments to McGregor, that's when Rodney and Inez turned on each other. "This was your idea," Rodney had shouted. "You said small doses, gradual decline, no one would suspect. Now we're facing prison because you couldn't plan properly." Inez had fired back immediately. "I planned it? You're the one who actually put the antifreeze in his food. You measured it. You served it to him. Don't act like you were some innocent bystander." Martinez had tried to stop them. "You're both guilty. The recording proves it. Take the plea or spend the next decade in prison. Your choice." They'd taken the plea, but the damage to their relationship was done. A week later, the civil suit reached judgment. The hearing lasted 15 minutes. Inez and Rodney didn't appear. Couldn't afford to take time off work they no longer had, or maybe just couldn't face another courtroom. I sat with McGregor while Judge Harrison reviewed my documentation, the spreadsheet I'd maintained for 3 years. Every loan, every date, every broken promise. $80,000 in principal, the judge read aloud, plus 5% annual interest compounded, plus legal fees and costs. He looked up. The defendant's failure to appear is noted. Judgment for plaintiff in the amount of $95,000. He signed the order. McGregor thanked him. We walked out. They'll file for bankruptcy, McGregor said in the parking lot. Probably within days. Can they discharge this in bankruptcy? No. Judgments for intentional torts, fraud, conversion, things like that, aren't dischargeable. This was deliberate financial exploitation combined with attempted murder. They'll owe you this money for the rest of their lives. We'll garnish wages. Probably get $200 to $300 monthly from each of them for the next 20 years. 20 years. 240 months of reminders that actions have consequences. That seems appropriate, I said. They both filed for bankruptcy within 10 days. Chapter 7. Liquidation of assets. Not that they had assets anymore, but the filing went on their credit reports, destroyed their credit scores, made future loans nearly impossible, and then they learned what McGregor had already told me. The judgment wouldn't go away. Through the court system, caseworkers who knew McGregor, clerks who processed paperwork, I learned their marriage was disintegrating completely. They'd started discussing divorce even before the criminal case resolved. I want a divorce, Inez had told Rodney, according to their shared caseworker. I can't even look at you anymore. Everything we tried to get from my father, we lost because of your incompetence. Rodney's response, my incompetence? You're the one who wanted him dead. I'm filing first, and I'm telling the judge this was all your idea. Mutual destruction. They'd tried to murder me for money and ended up destroying each other instead. The plea hearing was scheduled for the following Tuesday. McGregor asked if I wanted to prepare a victim impact statement for the court. I spent 3 days writing it, reducing 3 years and $83,000 and a week in a coma into 2 pages of measured factual testimony. No emotional manipulation, no begging for harsh punishment, just truth, presented the way I'd once presented audit findings to executives who'd cooked their books. Paragraph 1. Financial exploitation over 36 months, documented with dates and amounts. Paragraph 2. The poisoning itself, the medical evidence, the 36-hour coma, the neighbor who saved my life. Paragraph 3. The betrayal of trust, the destruction of our family relationship, the permanent impact on my sense of safety. Paragraph 4. The consequences they now faced, legal, financial, social, and my belief that the justice system had worked exactly as designed. I read it over 3 times, making small edits, removing any phrase that sounded vengeful or bitter. This wasn't about revenge. It was about accountability, about making sure the record showed exactly what they'd done and exactly what it had cost. On Monday evening, McGregor called one final time. They've both signed the plea agreement. The hearing tomorrow is just formality now. The judge will accept their guilty pleas. You'll read your statement. She'll pronounce sentence. Should take 45 minutes. And then it's over? The criminal case, yes. Civil judgment enforcement continues for years. But the main legal proceedings, over. I hung up and sat in my study for a long time. Tomorrow, my daughter would stand in court and formally admit she'd tried to poison me. Would say the word guilty out loud, on the record, permanently. Part of me, the part that remembered her as a child, that had walked her down the aisle at her wedding, that had believed family meant something, felt grief. But the larger part, the part that had spent 36 hours unconscious while my organs failed, felt only quiet satisfaction that justice was nearly complete. The courthouse steps felt different on the morning of the sentencing hearing. 6 weeks ago, I'd been a victim. Now I walked through those doors as something else, someone who'd taken every legal avenue available and used them exactly as designed. McGregor met me in the lobby. We rode the elevator in comfortable silence to the 3rd floor. Courtroom C, Judge Sarah Morrison presiding. Inez and Rodney were already there, sitting on opposite ends of the defendant's bench with their public defender, between them like a human buffer. They didn't speak to each other, didn't even look at each other. Inez wore a plain black dress. Her hair was pulled back severely. She'd lost weight, the sharp angles of her face more pronounced than I remembered. When she saw me enter, something broke in her expression. Not defiance, not anger, just raw, undisguised shame. Rodney slouched in his seat, staring at the floor. His suit was the same wrinkled one from the eviction hearing. He didn't look up when I passed. All rise. Judge Morrison entered. Mid-50s, gray hair and a neat bun, the bearing of someone who'd seen too many cases like this. She settled at the bench and reviewed the file briefly. We're here for sentencing in the matter of the state versus Inez Marshall and Rodney Marshall, case number 2025, CR 00847. Both defendants have entered guilty pleas to attempted poisoning. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor. Their public defender stood. Both defendants wish to enter their pleas and proceed to sentencing. Ms. Marshall, the judge looked directly at Inez, you have entered a guilty plea to attempted poisoning. Before I accept this plea, I need you to acknowledge in your own words what you did. Did you participate in poisoning your father with antifreeze? Inez stood slowly, her voice barely carried. Yes, Your Honor. I did. And you understand this is a felony conviction that will remain on your record permanently? Yes. Mr. Rodney? Rodney stood without looking up. Yes. Yes what, Mr. Rodney? Yes, I participated in the poisoning. And you understand the permanent nature of this conviction? Yes. Judge Morrison made notes. I'll hear the victim impact statement now, Mr. Marshall. I stood and walked to the witness stand. The bailiff held out a Bible, then remembered and substituted a simple affirmation. I raised my right hand, confirmed my identity, took my seat. The courtroom was quiet. I unfolded my typed pages and began reading. Over 3 years, I gave my daughter and her husband $83,000. I paid for business education, startup ventures, and credit card debt they accumulated. These were presented as loans. None were repaid. My voice stayed steady. Just facts. Just numbers. In return, they added antifreeze to my food for a week, hoping I would die so they could inherit my estate. I spent 36 hours in a coma. My organs began failing. My neighbor's vigilance in calling emergency services saved my life. Inez was crying now, but silently. Rodney remained motionless. This betrayal destroyed our family relationship permanently. I can no longer trust my daughter. I cannot allow her in my home. The person I raised, the child I loved, chose money over my life. That choice has consequences beyond what this court will impose today. I paused, looking at Judge Morrison rather than at them. I believe the justice system has worked exactly as designed. The evidence was clear. The legal process was fair. The consequences they now face, criminal record, financial judgment, social consequences, are appropriate to their actions. I ask nothing more from this court than what the law provides. I folded the pages and stepped down. Judge Morrison took a moment, reading through the pre-sentencing report. Then she looked at Inez and Rodney. I've seen many cases, but few with such clear premeditation and cold calculation. The audio recording leaves no doubt about your motives or actions. You planned to murder your father for money. That you failed doesn't diminish the intent. She paused, letting the words land. I'm sentencing you both to 3 years supervised probation, 500 hours of community service each, $10,000 in restitution, and permanent no-contact orders with the victim. If you violate any terms at all, you will serve the maximum prison sentence of 15 years. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor. Inez's voice broke. Yes. Rodney's was flat. You're dismissed. Report to probation within 48 hours. The gavel came down, final. McGregor and I stood to leave. I was halfway to the door when I heard footsteps behind me. Dad? I turned. Inez stood there, tears streaming down her face, hands twisted together. Dad, I'm so sorry. I know those words mean nothing after what I did. The greed. It made me into a monster. I thought about money instead of you. I almost killed you. I destroyed everything. I'm so sorry. The courtroom had mostly emptied. Just us and Rodney still sitting on the bench 20 feet away, not participating in this. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, saw the person she'd become, saw the genuine remorse. Too late to matter, but real nonetheless. I forgive you as a father, Inez. That's what fathers do. My voice was quiet but clear. But as a person, as a human being who trusted you, I can't forget. You chose money over my life. That choice has consequences you'll live with. I hope you learned something from this. Can we ever... She couldn't finish the question. I don't know. Not now. Maybe not ever. That's for time to decide. I turned and walked out. Behind me, I heard her crying harder. I didn't look back. McGregor waited in the hallway. "You all right?" "I'm fine." We walked out together into September sunshine. The air felt cleaner somehow. Lighter. "What now?" McGregor asked. "Now I go home and live my life." 1 month later, I sat on my porch with morning coffee, watching the neighborhood wake up. September had brought cooler mornings, that first hint of autumn, even in Florida. My painting supplies sat on the side table. Watercolors, brushes, a practice pad with amateur attempts at landscapes. The Tuesday morning class at the community center was surprisingly enjoyable. I wasn't good yet, but that wasn't the point. The point was doing something for myself, something that had nothing to do with accounting or family drama, or justice. My phone showed calendar reminders for coffee with Tom Henderson tomorrow, lunch with Robert Chen on Thursday, a consulting project next week that I'd actually accepted because it sounded interesting rather than obligatory. On the desk inside, in the middle drawer, sat an unopened letter from Inez, postmarked 2 weeks ago, her handwriting on the envelope. I'd held it several times, felt its weight, put it back unopened each time, not because I was avoiding it, not because I was nursing the wound, simply because I hadn't decided yet if I wanted to know what it said. That was a choice I could make on my own timeline, or never make at all. The power to choose was mine now. The civil judgment garnishment had started. McGregor sent me monthly updates. $238 from Inez's new job at a call center. $204 from Rodney's warehouse work. Every month for the foreseeable future. The money didn't matter. The reminder did. My health had fully recovered. The nephrologist had cleared me at my 3-month follow-up. "No permanent damage," he'd said, sounding surprised. "Your kidneys bounced back completely." So had I, in ways that weren't medical. I'd learned something through all of this, though I wouldn't have chosen this method of learning. That justice and revenge aren't the same thing. Revenge is about making someone suffer. Justice is about making things right, or as right as they can be after wrong has been done. I hadn't made Inez and Rodney suffer for pleasure. I'd used the legal system exactly as designed. Courts, attorneys, evidence, due process. Everything above board, everything documented, everything fair, even when they'd been unfair to me. And that somehow felt more satisfying than any personal vengeance could have. The newspaper sat beside my coffee cup, open to the community section rather than crime news. The world continued. Life continued. I continued. Somewhere across town, Inez was presumably starting her shift at the call center, working to pay off a debt that would follow her for decades. Somewhere else, Rodney was moving boxes in a warehouse, doing the same. Their divorce proceedings were pending. Their lives had been thoroughly dismantled. I felt no joy in that, but no guilt either. They'd made their choices. These were the consequences. Natural, legal, appropriate. A car pulled up across the street. My neighbor's daughter visiting with her kids. The children spilled out, running toward their grandmother's door with the energy only children possess. The grandmother scooped them up, laughing. Family. Real family. The kind built on love rather than financial expectation. I finished my coffee, collected my painting supplies, and headed inside to get ready for the day. The Tuesday class started in an hour. Maybe today I'd finally get the shading right on those trees I'd been practicing. The unopened letter stayed in its drawer. Maybe I'd read it someday, maybe not. Either way, I was free to choose. And that freedom, more than any guilty verdict or dollar amount, was the real measure of justice achieved. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.